You want to see a new thing that I have discovered?
Do I?
It's
Absolutely.
a little thing I like to call investing. I do things while wearing a vest. Now I've upgraded from fanny packs to vest because look at all these pockets. Comment below what you guys think of this stupid vest. It's even the whole back. You can see the entire back is a pocket. And what it lacks in functionality, it makes up for in sexuality. It's funny because every time I go out and I'm doing these little things in in the woods and I'm having to carry all this gear, I just call it investing because I'm just going out in my vest. So a lot of people have been signing up on the site, and a lot of people have been I've been doing some of the, what do you call it, the 15-minute calls. Keep doing that, guys, because the people that are signing up do the 15-minute call. We can get you started. So that's super cool. And go on the blog. I have made this video 3 times and it hasn't, and every time it's gotten erased or something has happened just through my own fault. But it's breaking down the fact that if you can do like the journaling work and actually seek the essence of what something is trying to say, the Second Amendment is actually about access to technology to balance out powers between people and their resources and potential oppressors or people that want to take it. And it's not really about guns, because at that time, bearing arms was kind of the height of technology. But to understand that this technology that we're using now, we should really be aware of that and learn how to have these conversations from a more broad, open. I've had it with people. I mean, I literally had it with a group of guys that written on their trucks were MAGA warriors. And by the end of it, they all realized they need to journal, and it's not all about guns. It's like, what's the essence of why we're doing these things? And then how can we have these conversations from a win-win perspective from a place of wisdom? And I've been living on farms. Trust me, you want a gun. This algorithm that we're working on is the thing that makes your world so small, which actually puts you in fight or flight, and it's ruining our impulse control, right? And when you have access to technology that can compound your decisions, it can also compound the effects of a reaction. All of the work that I do personally has nothing to do. I've never taught anything that people don't already know. My joy is teaching people to be aware when the thing you know goes away and you don't know it anymore, because maybe you're stressed, emotional, maybe you're feeling your nervous system changes and all your wisdom can fly out the door just with, like, if a cute girl's watching you.
Right.
That being said,
right.
we like to invite people to come read some of the new stuff coming out. And other than that, I'm gonna eat a piece of chocolate.
Yeah, spoken like a true dragon in a goat moon.
I mean, I don't want to get preachy, and that's my nature, is to always accidentally preach, but heaven is responsibility and hell is blame. And we've really been outsourcing a lot of our responsibility towards things.
Yeah, true.
And when you give power to people like that, they don't give it back. So the idea is, how much responsibility can you take? And how much can you see through the algorithms and the funnels of information that are coming to you? My favorite thing about the law of attraction is there's finally a metric of the law of attraction. And what that metric is go on your phone and go on your YouTube channel and see what the videos are that are coming up, because what you're focusing on and engaging with is in that feed. So if it's all politics, then you're bringing that into your world. So it's actually a metric of what you focus on. And so you can see that and say, is that the world that I want to see and create? Or do I want to start changing my conversations and changing the things I interact with? Literally, it's a metric. That algorithm works exactly like people say the law of attraction works. It doesn't know if you like it or dislike it. It just knows you're focusing on it. So you can finally measure your intentions. And I think that's the coolest thing in the world. So what are we doing? We're going into what?
Yeah.
What's our moon?
Currently, we're in a goat moon, which is the last. This is the last moon of summer, and so we're technically in the process of actively ending summer, and that is what the eighth moon is all about. Yeah, everybody give a round of applause for summer. Yeah, bye. So it's so the eighth moon is sorry, the seventh. Where are we? The seventh moon is about the ending of summer, and how we can, as you mentioned, responsibly end summer. And it's a monkey moon. So it's a very interesting time because what monkey chi represents is a little bit of like, can't call it. So I'm not sure exactly how it's going to go. And that's a little bit of what we're dealing with because when yin comes back, okay, because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about the cycles of yin and yang, right? So we can talk about moons, but within that is these like bigger flows and the relationship between yin and yang. So yang has been dominant, right? And since the solstice, it's been in decline, just gradually. But as yin starts to come back now, say the age of a preteen, like, you know, a toddler, but is able to ask questions, is able to sort of challenge assumptions. So the idea behind the reemergence of yin, seasonal yin, and that's what we're considering when we're looking at the monkey moon, the seventh moon, is the reemergence of yin. So when yin comes and reasserts itself, it doesn't do it by domination. That's a yang trait. So when yang comes, it moves things and dominates and expands, you know, and encourages action. When yin starts to come back and serve as an influence, it basically undermines. It calls out excessive habits. So the things that we take for granted in terms of Yang's expansion, growth and expansion, growth and expansion, all of those things we've been promoting in that way are now being steadily undermined. So like think you know, the rugs being pulled out from underneath those sorts of things. And we are basically encouraged to question our assumptions around those things. So we're shifting away from this kind of generative, accumulative standpoint and toward more of a conserving, editing, storing, you know, kind of standpoint. So this expansion has been admittedly over the last couple moons because the elemental relationship, you know, a metal horse and a metal goat, this kind of expansion has been kind of halting. So we go a little bit and we stop, and we go a little bit and we stop. So we maybe never really felt like we got into like a big flow of production, you know. And the hot take on that is you're not entitled to that. You're not entitled to like just effortless expansion in your summer. Even summers can be kind of halting and like and it just depends, you know, on the cycle of time, you know, how those things express. But we're starting to recover, right? Essentially a fluidity with this eighth moon because it's a water monkey moon. So we're starting to recover a fluidity to our movement just in time to retreat. So it's a very interesting kind of consideration because there could be a lot of dissatisfaction this moon. Like I feel like summer never got going, you know, like it'd be a lot of complaint and be a lot of grievance around these things. So it could be a time of complexity and where the goat moon, yeah, go ahead, man.
If I was a complainer, so like say I'm what's the other side of that? So it's like because sometimes like you know when someone's like feeling something, it's because you know it's kind of like addiction probably means like a lack of community or not being seen or something. You know, where like you want to hide. So like if I'm feeling that, what
Yeah,
could
I
it?
mean, there's so many different. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's very individualistically based. That's the thing. Like, I don't. I mean, many creative minds out there can talk about like what it's like to calm the mind and you know and like center ourselves, and so all of those things are valid. I encourage all of those things. I'm not necessarily the person that I mean, I could give you some things, but all I'm trying to say is that the environment is ripe for this kind of swampy, toxic heat and damp kind of thing. So there's what I'm saying as an astrologer is that there are emotional landmines ahead.
Oh,
So how
sweet.
you're able to self-regulate in that atmosphere, kind of up to you, because from a Taoist Confucian standpoint, it's not so individualistically minded,
Okay.
you know. Um, so the interesting thing about this seventh moon is that two things. Even though the monkey moon is a time to recognize that we have the capacity of human beings to keep pretending, right? That summer's not over. We have the capacity to keep pretending that things aren't starting to shift, right? And that's a really powerful capacity. And so that means that we also have the capacity to create conditions for our own downfall. It's very tricky when you're thinking about monkey, right? Monkeys can actually be their own worst problem. So there's no God required for that. It's just what's available. It's just sort of the trickster kind of energy that comes with the seventh moon in this transition in the end of summer and the beginning of fall, right? So as it turns out, many of those patterns for undermining ourselves or basically, creating our own downfall are inherited. So that's the reason why traditionally during the seventh moon, there's this period of time where you can recognize some of the ghostly ancestors that we carry. And ghosts are basically those ancestors that died that couldn't get away with it.
Mm.
And now they're hoping we can. So they're putting their eggs in our basket, hoping that we can get away with it where they couldn't, right? So there's rituals to kind of appease the dead, so they don't encourage us to act out, right? So we can sublimate those kinds of senses and feelings. So there's a lot of techniques, some of which you mentioned in the beginning, like how you can take responsibility, for your situation, because monkeys don't like that. Monkeys like to get right up close to trouble and then sidestep it, right? So this is the whole technique of navigating decline.
Right.
But what we're talking about here is impulse control and innovation. Because the real and most amazing thing about the monkey moon, and it's particularly this monkey moon, is that we get a return of imagination, right?
Mm.
So which has sort of been on a hiatus for a few months, because the elemental configurations haven't been great for the wood dragon. But when we're talking about a water monkey moon in a wood dragon year, then basically what we have is this kind of a return of imagination. But as it turns out, that kind of it usually will come up in conditions of stress, like the whole idea of necessity is the mother of invention, right? So when we get into a position where we feel stressed out is when we need that kind of innovation the most. So, the wisdom tradition would say, yeah, those two things go hand in hand. You can't have like innovation without a level of stress.
Mm.
Right? At least not right now. Innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens because you have a problem that you need to solve,
Mm.
right? So that's kind of the territory that we're going into. Can you innovate your way out of the tangle that you're in? And the biggest question I think was interesting is how does risk turn into crisis? Right? How far can we push something in a sort of innovative way, like without causing a crisis?
One of my favorite ideas is the Japanese. I think it's like kiki or something like that. It's the word that is crisis and opportunity, right? And our
Sure.
misinterpretation
Yeah.
of it is we feel that crisis is opportunity. And I think that's a beautiful misinterpretation. But really, it also means like
Mm.
in the Zen work of like taking a step back and pausing, what you're trying to do is make sure that you kind of zoom out a little bit because you don't want to give crisis an opportunity,
Yeah.
right? Because like, and and so what I personally get, that's why the times that I feel the most stressed or whatever is during transitions and fighting jujitsu, all this stuff.
Mhm.
The rule is accidents
Uh-huh.
happen at
Yeah.
intersections, right?
Mhm.
And so when we're
Mhm.
intersecting like certain things, that's where the potential is there, right? And so, and I guess we're at an intersection of leaving, summer and all these other things, and that's like all woo woo. But sometimes, I mean, in
Mhm.
my personal thing, it's like I'm always intersecting a world or a time or like a task or something. There's always plenty of opportunity for crisis, and that's
Yeah.
why I annoy people
Yeah.
with the slow pace I take.
Yeah. The interesting thing about what you're saying, I think, from a Zen perspective, from the Buddhist perspective that surrounds this Zen attitude, is
Mm-hmm.
that the major question is who's having a crisis. If you're just sort of assuming that, oh, well, me, well, like that's kind of the missed opportunity, because we should be deconstructing from a Buddhist standpoint. What's the source of this crisis? And the interesting thing is that monkeys are always connected to desire and the problems that come with desire, right?
Mm-hmm.
So desire is kind of at the root of things when we're making this transition, because we're going from this, hot energy, productive energy, expansive energy of the summer toward this kind of cooling down, scaling back, conserving energy. And so in between there, the reason why we pretend is because we really just want to keep a hold of something, right? So our desires are clearly at play. And it's not meant to be, to say that it's not like, oh, desire bad. It's not that at all. It's really to just recognize that that's what's at play. And that's how we are able to, basically do ourselves in. But when we take risks based on those desires, then we can create a sense of crisis around them as well. So there's a lot of tools, I would say, for emotional self-regulation and the management of our expectations and the management specifically of our disappointments, because what we have here in this water monkey moon for the next 2 moons, we're all going to be under some level of acute emotional pressure, because for the first time this year, the water element has returned. And so we just came from 2 years of water, and we're in this, wood dragon moon, fresh. People feel more at ease, more forward going and stuff. And now we get this kind of swampy energy that comes back. And so whereas the goat is calling for harmony on this broad social scale, the monkey's call is for balance. And balance requires some skill, right? You need to have some skill, for individual emotional self-regulation, management of expectations and disappointments. Because if you're coming into the seventh moon with a long list of grievances, it's not going to get any better. Like it's only going to get worse. Like you're going to feel even heavier about that. It's going to get kind of almost unbearable, to the point where it could start becoming reactive. That's not doomsaying. It's just what the nature of the time is this hot, damp situation where life feels absurd. So that's the point where you should be screaming it out, letting it out, working with practices like things you offer, or physical practices, whatever you can to help, cool, bring yin, feed yin with gratitude, with self-care, with care for others, like on and on and on. I mean, we could spend a whole hour talking about all the different ways you can help yourself out. It's just that now those skill sets are actually particularly important. But if you're
This
going
is
into the seventh moon with a sense of curiosity,
if you guys didn't hear that, there's a interview that I did on this winter Tai Chi, he asked like, what should people learn? Like, what would you want to teach? And I was like, well, I would like to teach the difference between traditional art and the tradition of art. And I teach the tradition of art. And it's how do you find your voice in the fundamental skills that you've learned of a tradition, right? Which is to me, and that kind of blew his mind too, because we forget that, we're really busy trying to learn traditional arts, whether it's yoga, classical music, or whether it's dance, whatever the tradition is. But then there's the tradition of, which is how are you going to take those tools and communicate with those tools? Like, how do you communicate with those tools?
Right.
And that is like,
Right.
that's where I think the teachers are there to put us to, again, make little boxes and tell us to kind of think within that framework. It's kind of like, hey, you're just going to use this scale. Now we're going to play on this beat. And that scale and that beat, how do you communicate? And that's kind of where I feel the teachers need to be right now. I mean, where me as a teacher, where I like being the most. And that's what I've been getting busier with, like all the online training and stuff. People are just like, I journal, but I don't know where to go with it. And I'm like, yeah, that's the thing. Like, that's where the teacher comes in. It's like, no, try this, try this, try this. Think of these 5 different things using that same lens, but now tweak the lens just enough to see that you have everything inside you right now. And I think that's
right.
I mean, what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that
So those kinds of those kinds of experiences would be very nourishing, in the seventh moon, because there is an air of individuality that comes back with respect to the monkey, because the sphere of concern and the goat is very broad, who we are, but like monkey becomes a little bit more narrow, and becomes a little bit more concerned with a smaller group of people, because it's a little bit more tribal. It does have like a communal awareness of the surroundings, but there is this kind of turn toward reducing our footprint, and scaling back our obligations, and starting to bring it in. So this is the first steps of this kind of harvest, right? So the harvest energy is coming in. So like, what are we pulling in close, and what are we leaving behind? And I think this monkey is the first sort of step in that very complex process, because it's like if you're like a boy that, or some young child that has like spread all their toys out all over the room, right? And now you have to kind of pull in and gather. Some things go back in the box, and some things stay out that you're still working with. And it's not necessarily easy to make that transition in this particular culture, because one of the biggest assumptions that we make is that we need to solve a problem. That problem solving is the key to perpetual growth. Like, so that's our value, is this perpetual growth, right? So, and we're only just 1 or maybe 2 problems away from either securing perpetual growth or really getting what we want.
Yeah.
So that makes this particular moon very vulnerable for us, because there's a lot of enticements from our culture to continue thinking that way. And then we end up, we're trying to solve problems using the same tactics that generated those problems.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's our move.
That's our move. That's what we like to do. So, can we innovate our way out of the tangle that we're in? Probably, but like, the point of the 7th moon is you don't really know. Because descending yin is like pulling out the rug from things. So like, anybody who's saying, I got it, I know what I'm doing, you should give them a lot of room.
Yeah.
This moon, people with humility, then you can kind of team up, then you can kind of brainstorm and think together. But somebody who's aggressively saying like, I'm the one, look at me, I got that person a lot of room, because they're about to mess up in the most amazing way possible, and you don't want to get caught up in that, because you might get sucked into the undertow. So I think it's a trickster kind of wild card time. So there's some Murphy's Law a little bit going on, Matt.
In the humility department, um, one of the things that I notice is, I was writing the other day of how social media is kind of some of the death of humility, right? Because so much of it is like, oh, I'm feeling cute. Let me take a picture of that. You know what I
I
mean?
know, right? Everybody
Um,
has something to say.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And so I think but that's necessary for us to get the main currency that we're focusing on right now, which is attention. So I know we need attention right now in order to just, I mean, in order for just to succeed. I mean, our need for attention is worse than even what we needed in the 90s and early 2000s as bands, so I get it. But I think the discernment that we have to have is when we're playing a character, like there's parts of us that we can say, okay, this is good, or like I feel great and I feel cute, but like how to return back to that place of like, that was a character that I'm playing just in order to play this game that I'm doing in order to succeed or do whatever. And I mean, I'm
Okay,
always
yeah. Yeah.
too, because so many times, I'll be in front of a class and people are like, that's badass. I'm like, I'm in an artificial place of power right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's not the real thing. In this room, sure, I might be at the top of the game, but that's because we've agreed on that, but
Yeah.
out
That'll
there,
never work on the street.
yeah, yeah. And it's like, but out there, it's like, I'm still, um, an average, just whatever, and I'm carrying that. But it's like that's where the magic
Mm-hmm.
is when you know what you're dealing with through humility. Then you're not afraid to look at
Mm-hmm.
the strengths and the weaknesses, because it's just is. I mean, I learned this when I was a musician moving into martial arts. It took me 15 years to be able to say I'm good at what I do, because because my arrogance felt that I was not being
Right.
humble, right? And so it was artificial humility. But now,
Right.
like through humility, this practice has humbled me 1,000 times over. I can say I'm good at what I do because it has beat the snot out of me and it has made me stand up and say, wow, like this is one of my best friends in the world. I'm good at it. And now I don't feel like a arrogant kind of jerk face
Right.
for, I don't feel like I'm bragging anymore, right? It's more of a time in thing. I think
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
discernment we
So this
need.
is the process. Yeah. Right. So there's a process on this for everyone. That you have to be invested in something enough to care about it, to do, to be industrious, and then at the same time be ready to give away.
Right.
you know, like here you go. Like I spent 15 years on this. Here, take it. And that kind of. I think that the interesting thing about this particular moon, one of the pitfalls, and we talk about this swampy kind of the end of toxic heat, like this kind of toxic heat, is that a lot of us can be caught in a tide of bitter feelings, because either clarity or success is not distributed evenly, right? So goats want things to be distributed evenly. Monkeys are like, that never happens, right? So there's a kind of realism, like really raw, realism that comes with the autumnal wisdom of the monkey, is that you don't always get what you want. So, and so there's a real tendency toward grievance and self-destruction that comes with that, just one thing, and so that it's important for us to remain embedded in something pragmatic and practical. Don't abandon things just because it's not going well. That's what I would say, because it interjects some levity.
Is this astrology why you keep saying
Yeah,
words?
I mean, it's autumnal. Yes, autumnal. Autumnal means like
Is it used
there's
anywhere
wisdom, a different flavor of wisdom.
else? Is it used anywhere else?
I'll have to look around.
Comment below if you've ever said autumnal casually in conversation.
If anybody else has said autumnal, in
Yeah, yeah,
what
yeah.
context does somebody say autumnal? I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, there's not a similar word for spring, fall, or sorry, summer or winter. Like you don't say like winterall. I'm not sure.
You know what
Yeah,
using,
it's a wisdom that's available right now.
you know what I feel? I feel like someone that uses autumnal casually would also say buttocks. That's what I think. Do you say buttocks? Say
I reserve the
buttocks?
right to comment on that. I reserve the right to comment. No comment. No comment. Talk to
Okay.
my lawyer.
Fine. I got a big road trip. I gotta jump on, and then I gotta get far away and back today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and all right.
Yeah.
Okay. You're always saying, should I travel by sea or go into the wilderness? Should I take a road trip today? Should I?
Sure. No, this is a good time. Yeah, this is a
Okay.
good
All
time.
right. Just checking. Okay. So what's
Yeah,
some
good
basic
time. Good timing.
advice?
Good timing. Good
All right,
timing.
guys. I needed a tangent right there.
I think,
What's your advice today for all these
yeah.
people?
I mean, what what I was what I was getting to just now was like the idea of don't abandon things. Like, assume that things will be difficult. Like slow down, like really slow down. And kind of stay with it. Just because it starts getting difficult or whatever, don't just say, "Oh, this isn't working anymore." Like you're going to have a lot of those emotions. It's not about suppressing them. It's just finding outlets for those kinds of emotions rather than to say that it's, externalizing the problem, right? So let the experience of what is absurd to be the perfect time to kind of let out stuck emotions, and recover kind of levity, because fixation is a kind of taking yourself too seriously, right? So seriously in this particular moon. So it is about like finding ways to release and recover, congested heat that because, the auspices of this particular moon, it's not just about this moon. It's about the habits that we've built over lifetimes of coming to this place and feeling like we deserve to push forward, right? So we have all these assumptions sort of embedded in our physiology about what happiness actually is. When we get to this place, they're actually counterintuitive to what's available. So sooner or later, that's going to exhaust itself. And we won't be able to do the thing that we think is actually going to bring us. And then we have this kind of crisis, we have this kind of crossroads and intersection, as you say. So all of us are in kind of varying degrees in this place every time we come here, every year. So some cases would be very acute and maybe even attached to some sort of chronic condition. And some of it is just like discontent. So all of it's equal over this really critical period in the Tongshu, in the almanac, which is this kind of late summer going into fall. This is a very critical period from this cosmology standpoint, because this is where you pick up a lot of diseases and bad habits. This is how you misconduct yourself and then continue to do that. So undoing those habits doesn't happen overnight. So you can't look at this moon and be like, well, this moon did this or this moon did that. It's like, it's not just this moon. It's about all the other monkey moons that you've inhabited for your however many decades you've been alive, right? So that's what we're looking at as well. So there's a lot more cofactors. That's why it's it's complex. It's like monkey moon is the one moon of the year where you're like, I don't know, could go either way, like in terms of what may or may not happen. And so having the flexibility to be able to deal with that is really what we're trying to cultivate. And that starts with humility, some levity, some sense of like maybe even self-deprecation, just be like, I'm giving it my all, but you've done your best. Like, let's have some perspective as well. Like, don't beat yourself up, but like, don't take yourself too seriously either. Like, relax a little, kind of shake it up. Like, you might be squeezing on it too hard. So that's what I would say to a lot of people.
You mentioned fixation, and that reminds me. One of the one of the books that I'm putting out. So one of the most things that people have asked me, and you've probably heard people ask, like, when am I going to take on students to teach like the weird healing art stuff that I do, like the bone, myofascial, like emotional stuff that I teach. So I've decided to not. I mean, I don't have enough time, space, a way to make it accredited, nor do I have, am I in a time, or the curriculum, right? It took me 20 some years to get there. And then, I've been practicing for 30 some
later, when you're older. Yeah.
When I'm older, I would love to do it, but I'm starting now. But I initially wanted to say, like, I don't work off anything other than these broad principles, kind of like the Tao. And so I've been writing them down for the past 5-10 years, right? And so now I have it basically in a novel that I've written for the basic essence of healing arts, because a lot of the way pop healing arts goes and social media healing arts, way undisciplined. Not everybody, but like most of the stuff that hits me, I'm like, I get it. I hear what you're saying, but you got to dive a little deeper. So I'm starting it. The book is up top. So the first wave is a mailing list. So I'm releasing each chapter in a series of emails, which is private. So I'll be releasing that. I'll be starting it probably next week. I have them all loaded, but it's a process designing them and loading them. And so the email list will move into a private kind of blog. You got to be a reader, but if you don't have the focus to read, you ain't going to be a healing arts person anyway. So don't even worry about it. Like, throw that.
That's a fact. Yeah. Right.
So, I mean, that's first test, right? Can you show up for more than 15 seconds at a time, right? And once that happens, then
can you read a book?
A basic essence, because when I learned to heal myself, it was because I had issues. And then I learned how to do it on myself, and then over time, I learned how to practice on other people. So the main thing is like learning how to understand the mindset of it, and then move into the physical practice of it, and then move into the sharing of it. So that's kind of the process that I'm going. That's why I'm so connected to healing arts, is because I learned to change my mindset, which actually helped my entire being, right? That mindset shift is what got me out of being like a druggie at age 13. You know what I mean? Like, I was a chain smoking, glue sniffing, gas huffing, PCP doing 11, 12-year-old, I mean, I had a rough and tumble life. And that mindset shift, boom. I was no longer tuning out the pain. I was listening to its wisdom. And so I want to share that with you guys. So again, get on the site, sign up. I'll let you guys know whenever the mailing list is coming out. It's not free, but it's not expensive. I'm asking for donations for this. Because again, when I wanted my teacher's wisdom, I was cleaning his toilets and washing.
That'd be awesome. I'd look forward to reading that.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah. This has been like another dream. Journaling, major dream. This project with Sheldon and David Way, huge vision coming true. And then I have another team that just came up, a whole new business, huge vision coming true. And all of these people, like the advice you said, every single one of them, the reason why I feel so safe with them is when we've been invited to branch out, they're all like, no, we're just doing one thing. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Like, it's so focused right now. I'm loving it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty next level. But okay, so that being said, sorry about
sounds insular.
Yeah. Sorry about the kind of weird. I'm just saying that not even as a self-promotion, but as a way of like, hey, if you guys are interested in the story of tension makes fixation, which creates stagnation, which creates pain, let's do this. Because that can be physical, mental, emotional, anything, right? It can just, sometimes we get tense and fixated, and then it hurts. So that's how do we break that? Yeah. Anyway, anything you want to leave us with?
You want to do the 12 animals?
Of course. Lightning round.
Yeah. So who's made for this? Right? Who's made for this? So going by trines, the ones that are made for this are dragons and monkeys, like obviously. They are going to thrive in this particular time. because they're sort of expecting this kind of open-ended, playful kind of quality. They're sort of expecting this kind of exploration of crisis and opportunity. This is where things kind of feel the fluidity of it is something that they really enjoy, you know. So, and they might be kind of amused or bemused by how everybody else is drowning. You know, so they may be called upon to be of service to help kind of pull people out of their situation. So it's very dynamic kind of situation. So dragons and monkeys do the best. Rats are also able to thrive. They're, as you say, they're made for this. That doesn't mean it's comfortable. For rats, they're going to feel overwhelmed by all the sorts of shifts and changes and the reactivity that's available in this monkey moon, but they are made for it. They are made to navigate that kind of these kinds of dynamisms. Even though they may not like it, this is kind of their busiest time of year is right now. In terms of emotional, like, and stuff going on, this is their busiest time. The ones that do the worst are the domestics. So your rabbits, your goats, your pigs, all three of those are liable to feel somewhat blindsided or overwhelmed or sort of on their back heel. Goats in particular. I've thought about this with respect to goats are kind of always in a place of PTSD in America in particular, because they're wanting to create conditions of unity and harmony and egalitarianism. And we're basically in a situation where we're just one problem short of establishing unity. One problem, it's just one more problem. And so it's just kind of always out of their reach. And so goats in general are always a little bit on high alert, on edge. They have to find their places of harmony to have any kind of longevity inside this culture. But right now, all that's going to feel in question, and it's going to sort of potentially put them in a state of panic. So I would say just relax, try to relax, really dive in deep into like your core people. Same true for rabbits and pigs, as well as dogs. So dogs, they're not fond of chaos. They're not into it. Whereas like monkeys and dragons see opportunity in chaos, dogs are like, why doesn't everybody just calm down? Like they can get a little anxious. So what I would say to any of the domestics as well as dogs is tighten up who gets your access. Mm-hmm. So they want to be generous, but generosity feels a little risky right now. So that's okay. That's okay. If it feels risky, you don't have to do it, right? So the ones that are kind of in between are tigers and horses. Both of those are likely to overreact to what's happening right now. So what I would say is, especially tigers and the monkey moon, do not overreact. Like, no, it doesn't matter what it is. Just let it slide on by. You don't need to go chase it down. And then when it comes to snakes and oxen, they're very adaptable in this time, but their adaptability is kind of like their reaction to all the chaos of the monkey is meh. They don't really have to they don't have to get worked up. Neither snakes nor oxen really have to get worked up. They do very different reasons and very different methodologies. The oxen just sort of ignores it, and the snake is just sort of navigating in between the lines. But they don't necessarily have to feel very impacted by this moon. But they'll, probably there may be some obstacles like the rest of us. Is this an opportunity if you hit a Murphy's Law situation to kind of scale it back? But they're fully capable of doing that. So that's the 12. That's what I would say.
All right.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Dude, thank you. All right. Yeah, guys, again, lots going on. I'm taking private clients. I feel the journaling stuff is the most important thing we could be doing. I'm doing a little bit of self-care, a little bit of journaling, posture work. I'm 4 for 4 out here. People just being like, I've grown inches after journaling. They're like, I'm just taller, my posture's better, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, I just had an athlete the other day I met out at a cold plunge thing that I was doing, and he was not. But he's like, he said a couple things that rang true. I'd be really interested. He's like into finance and all this stuff. Only wanted to train. And I was like, let's have a conversation and talk. And sure enough, like, he's like, what? He's like, for the first time, he just sent me a thing. He's like, this is crazy. I don't even want it. He's like, what was that? He's like, I walk better. I'm like, yeah. You got it. You got to get your mind right. So, it's the best thing that I can share right now.
Yeah.
The training, just go on YouTube, find some shirtless dude or some chick in a bikini. She's training. Just do what they're doing. Fine. And you want the details, you want all, like, let's rock it out and, focus on the things that you're not seeing, because it's hard to look at your hands when a butt is in your face, right? So you got to realize, like, if I could give anyone any advice, when you're watching the beautiful people on the internet, look at their hands, look at their feet, look at whatever's on the ground first. It's hard. I remember when I used to teach in a thought. Remember that?
Right.
No one ever saw my hands because they were too busy looking at my genitals.
I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm proud to say that I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I'll give you a call.
All right, brother.
And again, get a reading from Scott. This is a great time transitioning. Find out what you need to edit, man. We're coming into fall. Every year is how to edit into fall. Yeah. The leaves are falling. Yep. So do it on purpose. Yep. Do it on purpose.
Yep. Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
The last thing, the way I always imagine, the way I always say is, yoga is you're editing on purpose. You're cleaning out your garage. You're putting things in little containers and you're letting go. And martial arts is you come home and your garage is on fire and you're just okay with that, right? And so, do your yoga and all this other stuff, because therefore, once you've gotten rid of those things, once you've edited things, if things do change outside of your control, you're not losing so much that it's just devastating. Right.
Not really losing so much. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Cool, man. See you guys later.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.